Is that just me joining?
That's
Call to order the meeting for Monday, April 27th, 2026, and we will start with our Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Super. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope you're all enjoying the lovely weather. And just a reminder to folks watching online, we are recording this. We're on Zoom and WestfordCAT, and it will be broadcast on the various channels. So moving on, we are going to go to our consent agenda with all those items.
So the agenda was reposted and updated
Oh,
with
sugar, I
budget,
missed that one.
the March budget transfers,
Okay.
which were sent out, and
Oh, I
maybe-
got it in the Google Drive, that's why, okay. Okay. So, all in, any motion to? There you go,
So
Bill.
moved. Motion to move the consent agenda.
And
Second.
Thanks, Shayna. All in favor?
Aye.
There we go. Okay. Moving swiftly along to our public comment, with no takers in the room. I don't know if we have anyone online, Val.
If anyone's online for public comment, you can raise your hand and you'll be unmuted.
Nobody? Okay. Let's move on then to informational updates and our lone student representative. Thanks for coming this evening, Gracie.
Let's see. The week before last, the seniors started their capstone, so I can imagine the building feels more empty. I don't know. There's certainly more movement because seniors are coming in and out throughout the day for AP classes, which I think those exams start next week. Over April break, there was a group of students who went to Japan, and I think that was a really cool experience. I know a lot of them had never been out of the country before, so that was definitely exciting. And there was another small group of students who went to Italy with the Latin department, and they saw lots of old architecture and things like that. And this Friday, Songs for a New World opens in the PAC, so that's the spring musical, and that should be a lot of fun as well.
Awesome. Super. Thank
Is
you.
there a sentence what it's about?
Yeah, I don't know that one.
Songs for a New World?
Yeah.
I actually do. Do you know? Did you want to say something? So Songs for a New World is a collection of songs written by Jason Robert Brown. Typically, it doesn't tell a story. There's not a specific plot. Sometimes productions will choose to try to weave together a plot, but it's Jason Robert Brown is a incredibly famous contemporary composer, and the music is contemporary. It's really excellent tunes, but it's usually a bunch of vocalists. Each individual song tends to be a story within itself, so it might even have more of a cabaret feel to it,
Okay,
if you will. It's not,
interesting.
but not a traditional plot.
cool. Thank you.
Yeah, but the music's excellent. Yeah.
Good to know. And so with that, we'll move on to our superintendent update.
Thank you. Well, welcome back, everyone. We do hope that everybody received whatever they needed for the break. I'm a big fan of that because everybody needs different things when we have these opportunities. So I hope that everyone was able to get that. The only real update I have is big. We have 2 finalists for the Nabnasset principal position. They will be meeting with me and our central office cabinet this week. And then next week on May 5th, and I'm going to send this information out to all the Nabnasset families tomorrow. On Tuesday, May 5th, starting at 5:30, we'll have opportunities for the meet and greet with these 2 finalists so that then we can receive feedback from them. They'll meet with the staff right after school, so each one of the finalists will have a separate meeting with the staff. for approximately 45 minutes, and then we'll give them a short little break, and then we'll invite families in starting at 5:30. So it'll run basically from like 5:30 to 7:30 for the families on Tuesday, but I'm going to send that out, like I said, tomorrow. The two finalists, one of them is Melissa Richard, who is currently the assistant principal at the Abbott Elementary School, and the other finalist is Dawn Marie Isles. I apologize, Dawn, if I'm saying that incorrectly.
Don Marie, yep.
Dawn Marie Isles. And she is currently an assistant principal in Lexington. And so we'll have these two next meetings. Hopefully, the feedback that we receive from the two different sessions will be informative. And in just a couple of weeks, we'll have an idea as to how we'll be moving forward there. The Miller principal position has been posted following Melissa Boylan's appointment as our next Director of Special Education and Social Emotional Learning. So we're wrapping up the NAB-NASIT position, and then we will be looking to have interviews for the Miller position.
For the NAB meet and greets, can you remind me, we do like an exit survey?
Yes,
For-
thank you. Yep. So our typical
That's
practice.
anonymous to you.
Yep. So our typical and I already figured out it even a way, we've used Google in the past, but now we can use Thought Exchange for
Oh.
pretty, it'll be pretty easy. So I'm going to create a Thought Exchange so that people can just use a QR code or even the address right there. But that is something that we do for the people who are able to participate. So that is something that we've done in the past. If they can come and listen to the finalists, give their presentation, and then there's a short opportunity for questions and answers. And then I always ask the people who have participated about their confidence level in the two different finalists. And it's been very informative, and I appreciate all the feedback that people give us.
Not sure if this is like confidential or whatever, but is there some possibility of considering one of those two candidates for the Miller principal, whichever doesn't get selected at NAB, as opposed to initiating a whole new search?
I mean, we've had a lot of conversations about this is a unique situation that we're in, and so what I want to do is I want to approach both with integrity in ways to look at them separately to figure out what does that mean. So I don't want to make any assumptions. But it doesn't mean that it's not possible, but I feel like the NAB-NASIT community is having a conversation, and I want the Miller community to be able to have a conversation as well. And while there is some overlap, they're also two different communities.
Okay. And moving on to school committee updates. I know there's loads to tell after our week's vacation.
Superintendent evaluation subcommittee meets tomorrow in person. Public is more than welcome to attend, but we will talk about Dr. Chu's collection of evidence related to his goals. We'll be ready by May for our composite evaluations, right around the corner. So,
I was just thinking that.
Oh, yay.
I think this is the first time we've
Yes,
ever
it is.
done
It's
that.
The first time, I know.
I
Last
know.
year when we were talking about it, seemed so far away.
Right? Time flies when you're having fun, Shayna. Awesome.
Also, this week, Finance Subcommittee will meet on Friday, and we are scheduled to do a review of the food service department. So Colleen Wallace, Director of Food Service, is putting together some data for us, and Jenny Lynn.
Awesome. And I'll just add then policy are going to meet next week. We usually try and meet the off weeks from school committee, so we're trying to get back on track with that one. But don't worry, we've lots happening, a lot of goals on fire. Anything else before the next few? Okay, just to remind people, tomorrow night we have the tri-board meeting. That's school committee, select board, and FinCom. We're meeting here in Millennium. There's an executive session for the first half of the meeting, from 6, and then it goes into public session. And that part of the meeting we'll be talking about kind of budgets, where we are moving forward, and kind of looking ahead to FY28 already, which is scary. And then there's a follow-up tri-board meeting again on May 11th. We have a meeting that night, so we're looking to meet earlier and kind of tag it on to our meeting that evening. That part of the meeting, that tri-board meeting that evening, is to do with the health insurance trust. And so there's a presentation. They had a consultant working with them. So there's a presentation to the three boards that evening with the kind of the information and what they found and what recommendations are coming.
That one's exec?
No, I don't think so, or maybe.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember being saying, but I will confirm that. And then more importantly, or just as importantly maybe I should say, May 5th is coming up, our voting day, town voting day. Valerie and Bill, you're up. Hopefully you'll make it through, and we'll see you back here after. But for those people, there's also voting. There's also early voting this week happening at the town hall, and you can check out the hours on the website. Typically, they're available during town hours, opening hours, town hall opening hours, I should say.
Tomorrow is their late day.
Is that the late day?
Till like 6:30.
Awesome. And so the contested races this year are select board. There is 2 seats and 3 candidates running in that race. And then there's a 1-year seat for select board with 3 candidates running for 1 seat. So lots of information online on the Westford League of Women's Voters. There we go. Is a great website. But
And some seniors might even be 18.
oh yeah.
As long as they
And
turned
vote.
18 and became registered by the cutoff.
And I like to remind people that less than 3,000 people
Yeah.
voted in the last local election.
Yeah.
So votes do matter.
Big time. Fingers crossed for you too. We'll see you back.
Thanks.
Yeah. And with that, we will move on to our first item of business. So we have Dr. Kelly and Dr. Jeff Coate, 2 of our curriculum coordinators from the district, who were with us, if you remember, a couple of months ago. They were beginning to explore the potential for a new science curriculum that really was kind of more cohesive across all levels of our schools. And so they're back with an update tonight on the piloted curriculums that we were trying. I think it was 2, if I remember correctly.
Yep. Well, they'll
So-
give you that update, yeah. they'll
Yeah.
Talk you through it.
So, Dr. Kelly, Dr. Jeff Coate, hang on, can we hear? Can you hear us? Oh, there we go. We're good.
I can hear you.
Awesome.
Do they want to give an intro, or should I start
Do you
sharing?
guys
Thanks for
want to
having
give,
us tonight. We're
an-
excited.
do you
to be
guys
here
want to
talk
give,
to you again about science?
do you guys want to give an intro, or do you want Valerie here to pull up the slides if you're ready to go?
Okay. Sounds good. Tell us when you're ready. There we go.
There you go.
Okay.
Awesome.
So exciting news, big reveal. We piloted a lot of science this year and learned a lot about different curriculums and also what we want for our science, for our students when they're learning about science. And so through the process from K to 5 and also in the middle school, we are excited to recommend Open SciEd for K to 8.
Oh, okay.
Next
If you go
slide.
to the next slide, Chris, do you want to tell why we're loving Open SciEd?
Yeah, so, Open SciEd has been piloted and researched and is a high-quality instructional material, which DESE recognizes. And we actually, Julie and I just got done a book study with a lot of elementary teachers and an administrator on the book Ambitious Science Teaching, which talked a lot about, some of the best practices in NGSS and the new, well, I guess they're not quite new now, but the math standards, which talked a lot about collaborative inquiry and student sense making, using inquiry phenomenon to have students engage in hands-on project-based learning that allows students to ask authentic questions, develop models from the youngest of ages, and to engage in this inquiry process. Open SciEd really embraces that research, has been adopted by a lot of districts and has really been embraced by districts and DESE alike. So we're very excited to endeavor into that and it's been a lot of fun working with the teachers at all the levels to see how it fits with our veteran and excited staff.
At the elementary level, and Chris, you can piggyback on for the middle school, but through this curriculum, we actually were really able to see all of our UDL goals kind of coming to life. So where we've talked before about, with UDL, we want the students to have agency and be leading the learning. Well, Open SciEd is, the whole curriculum is designed that the students are leading the learning, starting with the prior knowledge and experiences that they bring, acknowledging that as an actual resource for information, and then building forward from there. The students are even encouraged to design the investigation for a question that they generated. So this is really walking the walk that we've been seeking through, universal design for learning, and this curriculum just connects with that so much. And then in the elementary level, our literacy program has so many protocols for rich conversations and helping students learn through discussion. And we couldn't help but see the connections with the discussion protocols that Open SciEd uses that align so much with that practice. So in this way, the students aren't learning how to learn science or learning how to learn about literacy, but we're seeing connections that come across all the curriculums where the students are really learning how to be thinkers across all content areas.
And I want to add in middle school, because we field tested Open SciEd. We had 8 teachers of the 12 middle school teachers try 1 or 2 units. And we're just so blessed in Westford to have a staff of veteran teachers who are already kind of looking at what exists and excited about what they can bring and how they can personalize, with the investment we already have in science, to take this resource and to, allow it to, meet the needs in a way that honors the veteran staff that we have. So there's so much good that came out of doing it, that as we plan for implementation, we see a lot of possibilities into, not just what it offers, but what we can extend it to be for our kids.
Interesting.
I think the next slide is very informative. Just the research that Chris and I have done with the companies. The interesting thing about Open SciEd is that we purchase the kit materials or the print materials or the PD from different companies. So it isn't one company where you just order and work with one company. You're able to shop around. And so this was the research that we did based on the pilot experience and what we would need. And then we met with Chris and Courtney last week. Very exciting meeting to see if this would be something that would be feasible. And we're, excited to share that with you.
So can I interrupt for 1 second, Julie? This is where the conversations that we've had throughout the budget season, and we talk about our school choice funds, and we talk about as that becomes smaller and smaller as we needed to increase those offsets. This is one of those things that we would rely on those funds for, similar to when we were purchasing the new ELA curriculum for the elementary school. So we looked at what these costs would be projected out over those 3 years, and we do have those funds available in the school choice account. It will continue to deplete that account, but this is what we need to use it for. So that was why when Julie said that it was an exciting meeting, we had looked at it and looked at what those costs were, and it was something that I said, okay, it fits within what our projected potential financial obligations could be. I don't want to say within the budget because it's, we're using it is one-time costs. There are some things that become, science always has a layer of consumables, so the science budget is always slightly larger than some of the other content areas. But Julie and Chris both looked at that and saw that, okay, outside of this initial projected investment, it is then something that we would be able to continue to sustain within our operational budget.
Is that the kit materials
Yes.
line items?
Yeah.
Can I just ask then, is that typical for kind of roughly what we spend on kit materials at both levels annually, Julie and Chris?
So from the elementary perspective, this is different from the model that we have had because we've had TCI in place for so long that actually the material refurbishment went to the school buildings budget for a while because we solicited the materials as needed rather than buying a kit refill.
Okay.
But whenever you start a new science program or any program, at this point, we don't want to solicit the materials ourselves and individually Amazon everything because we actually don't know exactly which size toothpicks the kit is going to send and how those are used. And so for 3 years, it makes sense when you're starting the program to invest in the kit and in the refills. And then in that time, we're going to develop a sustainability plan for moving forward. Does it make sense to source the materials ourselves or go back to putting it at the building budget? But really, we want to have every material available so that the program is used and it's not the materials holding us back. So we want to start successfully and then build our program as we're learning the curriculum really well.
Right.
And I was gonna say middle school, this budget is based on a 3-year kind of rollout, which is something that most of the districts do. They kind of add a couple of units at a time, which allows for it to be manageable. And at first, your initial costs are what they call durable goods, which are one-time purchases. So you have to kind of buy those every time, that one time, the first time you do a unit. But there are often things that allow you to do the acre phenomenon, and they're things you can use over and over again. And then the refill costs get to be a little bit less. But what we budget for, at least in the middle school, and I believe in elementary, is those initial durable and the refillables for 3 years, just so that we can assess what's needed. Because a lot of the things you can buy on Amazon for a little bit cheaper, once you kind of assess what the use is. So the initial cost is a little bit higher, and then once you see what the uses are, you can kind of budget and plan for that. I do want to point out the middle school, everything is open source, so it's available online, free of cost of the material, and it's available to teachers in like a Google Drive. So they have access, and anything updated over the years updates right into that Google Drive. So all the teacher editions and the student printed materials, teachers can print readings and materials themselves, but it saves us a little bit of cost, compared to other programs because it's all available open source. And anything that gets, vetted and updated, automatically teachers have immediate access to because it's an open source curriculum.
Awesome.
Thanks for that, Chris. That was going to be my next question.
Well, but if that's the case, what is the student print consumable budget for?
That's the K to 5.
It's K to 5.
K to
Is it
5.
different? 6 to
And we
8
just
is
kind of-
open.
So,
With
so K to 5 is
different
not.
worlds,
Only 6 to 8 is
Well,
open.
actually, no, Julie's about to answer you, because
Sorry.
it is, but go ahead, Julie.
Okay, so K to 5, during the pilot, we actually did not order the print materials. And for the K to 5 students, we were making so many packets, and we had 14 teachers piloting across the district, but the copies were out of control with just those 14 elementary school teachers, that we just determined that the student print materials are so valuable and so needed that it was more efficient to purchase them for the students. So these would be like student workbooks. And then the teacher editions, we are just, in the elementary world, we have so many different content areas that having the print teacher edition is so helpful for us. We take it home with us on the weekends. You know, you have the screen up to see what you're teaching the students, and you have your teacher edition print here. So with the two different grade levels, we kind of really thought about it and are approaching it slightly differently as far as print materials go.
And those are questions that I had asked and we had talked about, and that's kind of when Julie was alluding earlier to what these initial costs might be versus what we might change moving forward, is that we might find that we don't need to continue to purchase the student print materials, but the idea being that one of the things that I'll explain to you in more depth when we talk about the curriculum review cycle that we've developed this year, which will be, we're going a little backwards with this because that's going to come up as we're getting closer to the end of the year. It'll be part of the information we talk about the superintendent goals, is this notion of, as we are assessing what we're doing, are we also being very mindful of our elementary staff who are responsible for 4 different content areas versus the 6 through 12 staff that tend to be specialists in very specific content areas. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the other concerns I had, and I'm wondering what kind of time or training we're giving our teachers to be able to implement this. I mean, it's a big change.
So, one of the reasons why we're having this conversation tonight is because we have the benefit of the next professional development day, which is coming up, which both Julie and Chris were hoping to be able to utilize some of that time to prepare other teachers who weren't a part of the pilot. The teachers who have been part of the pilot as well are helping to continue to build capacity, but Julie and Chris, I'll let you talk more specifically about that.
Go ahead, Chris, you can go.
Yeah, I was going to say for the middle school, the teachers who did the field test felt strongly that while we did have training as part of the field test from Open Syed, that because I have a lot of background in working with Open Syed, that time to work together was important. The teacher editions and the student print materials, one of the biggest flexibilities is all the material. We have Brisk, which is such a great asset. All the teachers have, the opportunity to take and modify every single thing that comes from there. So they, we actually are planning on meeting on the 5th for the full day to work on implementation. And specifically, before we teach each unit, we're going to take a day together and work on, the scope of sequence, how to honor the teachers' autonomy and their ability to modify for their specific students and things like that. So they felt like the time together, working together, was more valuable than professional development time based on that resource. And it's a small group. It's 12 teachers, and 8 of them were part of the field test. So it's a little bit different in the 2 different grade bands, but the teachers felt very confident in talking about how to implement here. That was the time together to work together with the curriculum as a group was critically important.
And we have time on May 5th. It's our Ed Camps Day, which is so exciting. And in the afternoon, teachers are going to make choices about the sessions that they go to. The K-5 science teachers given the opportunity to meet together at each grade level and really dig into what is Open Syed. Through the pilot, and if you go through the units and you look at the standards, the actual content of the science is not so different from a first grade unit that we have in TCI right now about light and sound. The content is very similar. The approach is what we'll be spending a lot of time with our professional learning about, and the approach is really putting the students at the center of the learning and trying to bite our tongues and hold back and not give the answer first, but ask the students to figure it out and lead them through our prompting. So really our professional professional learning will be about that kind of like change in instructional style to make the students be the sense makers and the source of information rather than the teacher being the beer, the knower of all science facts. So that's the shift that we will start to implement. And if we have time if we have the opportunity on May 5th, we have carved out time to do so. So that as we leave for the school year and prepare for next, we already have just a taste, a little appetizer of what's coming, but it's putting us in a better position than learning this brand new, like the very beginning of school next year or right before you're about to teach a unit. And like Chris said, we've gone back and forth so many times about the professional learning for this, and it would be unit-specific learning leading up to starting a new unit.
That's great.
Sorry, and that's definitely the piece I was worried about is the professional learning and changing the style of teaching. So that's really great to hear. Can you just clarify on the Ed Camps Day, is that an optional session for those teachers, or they would all be attending that?
Everyone who teaches K-5 science
I'm sorry.
will attend in the morning a science professional learning by grade level. In the afternoon, there'll be choices which they could go deeper. They may have chose to go deeper into the science or make a different choice. But every elementary school teacher who teaches science and anyone else who was interested to join would be part of grade level specific PD.
And in the middle school, all 12 of the teachers will do the professional learning on that day. And in some ways, it was really wonderful. They demanded it. And so I wanted to do it, and they were demanding we do it. So it's exciting to be able to have that time to come together and have the field test teachers. We had a field test teacher in every grade level in every school. So the teachers can really have a collaborative environment of sharing their experiences and help each other as I'm there to, help facilitate as well.
Dr. Kelly and Dr. Jeffco, I want to echo that because the latter portion of my parent-teacher conference in the spring with my daughter's third grade teacher, she was raving about Open SciEd and just hoping that this would be the decision by the district, and the anticipation of building kits, hearing my daughter come home and talk about the science exercises and the learning that they were leading, and it just got me, being a science teacher myself, just got my gears going. So I'm really excited, for the district and for the department to engage in this. It really sounds like this is the path forward. So
That's awesome.
Well, it's going to be the conversation all around because the excitement is certainly building. And if you scroll to the next slide, we won't read all those quotes, but they are available. It's really been mind-blowing how the students are driving the learning, and they're getting, it will say, and all of these things are possible ideas that the students could come up with. And when you're reading it for the first time, you're thinking, no way is that going to happen. I'm going to have to help them and stretch it out of them. And our students were just hitting all those targets through the discussion. And every time a lesson ended, I'm getting photos or texts, or you wouldn't believe in this email. And a big thing that you just mentioned was the students are talking about this outside of the immediate lesson. So coming back the next day, saying what they thought about it at home, and there's just a lot of great energy around the science right now.
That's awesome.
My
Go ahead. No.
My one comment on the pricing is around the 6 to 8 showing is 0. If we are looking at printing student worksheets and whatnot, I do think we need to just account for that to show that it is a curriculum cost, right? Because it will show up elsewhere.
It'll show up in
Right,
the
but this is the
building. This is from,
committee.
yeah,
I mean,
Right.
school choice.
yeah.
Right. So it's just, we just need to be aware if this does potentially result in more printing, that we just.
They're printing
they're
already
probably printing
at
already,
the-
right,
yeah.
but just being aware that,
Yeah.
you know, there is a cost, right? Both time and, you know, the resource of the copier. So just something to be aware of, to be transparent that, yes, it is not free.
It's just a different,
Yeah.
different.
Different line, yeah.
Right. So
Chris, did you want to say something there? Dr. Jeffcoat?
No, that's absolutely true. Certainly the cost of printing, but with TCI, they're already, you know, it's already all digital, so they're already printing.
Okay.
So it is it's static cost, but you know, and the beautiful flexibility is that they're not coming in PDFs, so that doesn't have anything to do with cost, but the teachers really have like the fact everything comes in a Google Doc or a slide, so they can modify so it makes for very easy modification and making it personalization. So it is true, nothing's free. There's no free lunch, but you know but at least what we're saving, you know, in it being an open source curriculum, the printing's not free. Allows for the flexibility, and you know, as I said, I think especially in the middle school, OpenSciEd takes feedback. They're constantly listening to teachers who are doing things. They're running focus groups, and when something's not going well, they change it, and it's rolled out to the teachers immediately, and they let them know we've modified this activity based on feedback. And they get it immediately. So that's something that's unique to other curriculum that I've worked with.
Excellent.
Awesome.
I had two quick process questions, and you kind of mentioned it, but I just want to make sure I'm really clear. Were we cohesive of K to 8 before this?
Yes,
Okay, and that was TCI.
correct.
And what was there something tried alongside this, or was this the only one explored?
So different at the 2 grade level bands. So the 14 elementary school teachers piloted 3 curriculums. They did 1 unit of OpenSciEd and 1 unit of another curriculum and another curriculum. So they tried 3 different science and settled on this.
Okay, thank
In the
you.
middle school, they had explored curriculum last year before I was here. They had settled on essentially piloting 2. Savas, which was the other one, is in the process of releasing their curriculum. And the teachers, you know, when we met, basically who had worked on the committee said, you know, that they felt OpenSciEd was ahead enough that they just wanted to field test it and see how it went. So that was a decision made back in October.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to field test it based on not being, you know, feeling completely comfortable with trying a curriculum that wasn't fully out yet and didn't have the rigorous analysis and testing that OpenSci had.
Thank you.
So I probably didn't articulate this well when we were developing the agenda, right? As this would be a shift in curriculum, it requires school committee approval. So it should say that there's a vote expected. I would ask that you would vote this evening to support their decision. That would be my recommendation based on, and I just didn't articulate that when we were developing the agenda. If you have more questions, we can certainly wait. I think what you're hearing is that the teachers are very enthusiastic about it, and so I already told both Dr. Kelly and Dr. Jeffcoat that I think utilizing the time on May 5th would not be wasted time in any way because it's going to be about strong instructional practices. But if you felt comfortable supporting this recommendation tonight, I would ask that you consider voting on that tonight. But because we didn't say that ahead of time, if you want to wait until the next meeting, we can certainly have it on the agenda at the next meeting. If you had any questions, we could get, answers for you before the next meeting as well, too.
Just one question then to clarify, that the FY27 cost, is that in addition to the budget we've already approved?
It's,
Or was
well,
it
because
some
it
more
would be
I know
coming out
it's
of school choice
choice,
money,
yeah.
so, yes. It would be, it is not built
It's-
into the,
yes.
because it's not part of our operating budget.
Okay.
It would be a
But it's
one-time.
built into the projections we
It-
did for school
yes.
choice.
No.
No, because
Yeah.
we didn't know exactly what it would cost at the time.
I thought we had a
but
placeholder, though.
We do, but we didn't have we knew in theory that there was going to require funds from school choice, and we knew that it was going to be coming in FY '27, FY '28, but we didn't put a dollar amount to it.
Okay.
But it is within the funds that we have available.
Okay, thanks.
So,
Any thoughts or
along
questions on
with
that?
just, it's the nature of budget. What are the trade-offs, if any, of tying that money to curriculum at this point? Like, is there something else down the pipe that we know of that we could need to seek alternate funding that you might have been considering?
Not that we'd be using school choice funds for, no.
Okay.
And what you will see when we bring the curriculum cycle to you is you'll see a 7-year, I think it'll still stay 7-year, the last conversation we had, we were looking at 7 years, but a 7-year cycle of curriculum review, which is gonna walk through basically what Chris and Julie have kind of talked about tonight for every single content area, which is gonna allow us to look at both planning so that teachers have an idea as to what's coming down the pike, and as we're developing our budgets, we can then continue to say, okay, we know that we need to make sure that we have funds available for this investment for high-quality instructional materials for this department. And we're starting that process with science.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I said, it has to be asked
Yep.
at this point that there are trade-offs usually.
But I mean, to that point,
So-
I think it's a good point. I will say, when I first started as a superintendent, our school choice reserve account was healthier. And so there would be a number of things that I would say, oh, if we had increase in fuel costs or increase in heating costs, we would be able to cover that. I now will tell you, we can't. But this is what I believe we should be spending the money on.
Right.
And that's why I think this is what we should be committing it to. We do have enough in the school choice fund projected for FY '27 to cover this and still have some money if there is an unanticipated cost, but it's not what it used to be. And that's one of the things that I've been communicating with our town partners, is that where we did not ask the town for additional support come the end of fiscal years, we now might need to start asking for that.
Yeah, we won't be able to cover facility-related things like.
Correct.
When was the generator or the.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, a perfect example, right? Yeah, we had to replace the generator at the Stony Brook
Wastewater
water.
treatment plant.
Yeah, and we were able to use funds for that, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's one of my largest concerns here, is that these are big numbers, and I appreciate wanting to make all of the materials available to the teachers so they have the maximum options. But I don't think I've ever seen a situation where the purchased curriculum was entirely used the way that it was written to be used, all of the materials were used. So my biggest fear is that we're gonna spend this money and have a lot of things sitting on the shelf. We're not gonna know how teachers want to adapt it, and things are gonna go to waste. That's my
So-
hesitation.
I will, and Julie, if I say anything incorrectly, please correct me, right? But let me say this so that I can make sure that I understood the conversation that we had. Because one of the things that we talked about was the nature of these are the costs that we're looking at, but it's not necessarily an upfront cost as much as we want to make sure that these funds are available if we need to order all of these materials, because one of the things that Julie was talking about is how we order the materials as we need them, as we're going through the process. And so we might find that one of the best examples was Julie was explaining to me how if you purchase a kit, knowing that 2 classrooms aren't necessarily going to be doing it at the exact same time, you can purchase a kit and then you can purchase a refill, right? And you might not necessarily need the refill after you've first utilized what that initial kit was. And so there's some of those costs that she's projected out what the entire costs could be, but it could end up being less based on what you're even kind of talking about, like when we see what the actual usage is. Because just even by the schedule alone, we know that the teachers aren't going to be doing it at the exact same time because science is only one aspect of the week. right? And so there are ways that they can collaborate and work with each other.
And would units and kits potentially be able to be shared across the 3 schools so that,
In some ways,
let's
yeah.
say Abbott's doing, these 2 units over this trimester while Crisafulli's got these 2, and there's like a circular pattern where there is, I don't know. But,
Different, yeah, go ahead, Julie.
Yeah.
No, these are 100% creative thinking is so important. And the professional learning that comes with purchasing the kits is or not just the kits, but the entire curriculum, because the kits are a big piece of it, and that's what makes the science happen, right?
Right.
The professional learning that supports the program ensures that we are utilizing every piece of that. And I understand your internal dilemma because we've struggled with that throughout the whole pilot process. One reason why we really liked going with Open SciEd is because it's not shifting to a fast track and buying materials that we're not ever going to put our hands on, but you had to purchase because it came with the curriculum. In this way, we're able to buy exactly what we need and not saying we're going to buy everything but skip these lessons. And we've done a lot of creative thinking and brainstorming. One thing that we really want to ensure is that all 3rd grade teachers, just as an example, across the district are able to teach the same unit at the same time for the professional learning and support, because otherwise we're duplicating efforts. And really, we've truly found through this process that working with our peers is the best learning. Getting together, what did you do for this? How did you adjust that? And even to the point where, like you said, in ECA, which is the kit company that I've been working with, it's for 30 students. So what Chris Chu was saying was, I've already been trying to brainstorm, like, okay, well, if it's 30 students per kit, but we have, 4 classrooms, how can we purchase fewer essentials kits and more refills kits to bring the numbers down and make sure that the students have what they need, the teachers have what they need, and that we can use the materials we buy.
I would presume too that things like the workbooks, like after the first year, if we found that we weren't using as much of the workbooks as we thought, that we could always go back to doing print copies, right? Using the workbooks we had left over. So that could be a change in costs, like to be able to stop and evaluate year 1. Like, I know sometimes in elementary school, my kid came up with a workbook at the end of the year and there weren't a lot of pages done on it. So if we're being more mindful to say, like, maybe we're evaluating that at the end and then deciding, like, hey, risk reward, maybe we're not using all the pages, and certain units we used more pages, and maybe we should print instead of purchasing the workbooks. So I think just being mindful of those would be a
And I think I would approach the kits differently myself, in that it's upfront, the first year especially, buying enough for everyone for the equity piece. Not having to scrimp or putting it on the individual schools that may say, oh, well, we want to spend money on this other thing, so we're again not going to do this unit, or we're not going to do it to the fullest. So I do think from the equity, having the full kits is a good idea. It is a cost, right? But again, we talk about that a lot, that we want the same experience across all of our schools. So
We're definitely, this is a process, and to implement takes at least 3 years, sometimes 5. And in part of this process, we've already been brainstorming with the leadership subgroup in the elementary science about how do we create our own space where these leftover materials are housed. So 4 years down the line, when we are, resourcing the materials, well, you come shopping, in the science room, and that's where you can get the additional cotton balls and things like that. But right now, in the beginning, like you said, it is equitable to have everyone have the materials as prescribed. And then while we're rolling this out, what are we doing behind the scenes to make it sustainable for our district and for us?
Yeah, I just want to point out too, like, this is a curriculum shift in pedagogy, so to honor that with the teachers, I have worked with ECA, and one of the things they do a good job at is prepping the kits so there's no barriers to use. It's all there, it's all cut, it's all ready to be used, which is why we went with them for the field test in both elementary and middle school, so that the teachers, can fully embrace trying it, working with the students and seeing. And then after the 3 years are up, then we can kind of reconvene and think about, okay, do we need to buy another refill, or, can we, source some of the materials on Amazon for a cheaper price now that we kind of have seen and know, when you're first launching a new curriculum, we just want the teachers to try it and experience it and have the full support so that they can make those judgments later on. And that's what we priced out, so that the teachers can focus on, feeling supported, trying the new curriculum and working with the students to make sure the implementation is as strong as possible. And then they can reflect on, because I think they will find that some of the materials like pipe cleaners, we can buy on Amazon a little bit cheaper, but now we have a good idea as to, we've done it 3 times. We know, what that looks like in our classrooms.
I think something just popped into my head on that cost. I know it's big, but I'm also trying to keep in mind, this is K through 8. So we're, hitting, if my math is right, about 2,500 students, am I right? Or 2?
Mm-hmm.
So, for less than $1 a head for FY27, compared to the amount of students that would be accessing it, I just, it's quite a lot. It's not like it's just one grade level or. Do we feel as a group we can take that vote tonight, this evening, to approve this purchase? Or do we feel we need time? I mean, the other thing is we are meeting tomorrow night as a group, that we also have that option if we needed to take a minute then, if you just need 24 hours, or you feel you're ready to vote this evening. So, anyone want to?
I personally feel a little bit caught off guard. Like, I saw that we were going to be updated, which was cool. I didn't realize we were voting. There's not a lot of information here. Like, I appreciate we've had a great discussion, but there's not a lot of substance to the slides here. There's not an understanding of the question that was asked earlier. How much did we spend before? What kind of curriculum do we have before? What were the problems that we had? What are we solving here? How did the pilots go? So, it's just a lot of money to ask for without that information. Now, that said, I would like to lean on my more experienced peers here to say, if we asked that kind of information for every single decision we ever made, we'd be here all day. So
I'm glad you said that, because I was going to say,
recognize.
those are great questions, but I did not ask them to do that, nor would I really want them.
It may not be our place
Right,
to ask those
but I
questions.
appreciate
don't know.
that.
So
That's good.
I would lean on you all to kind of.
You were a previous
see what
science
we
teacher, so.
Right.
try to-
Yeah.
I think it is a lot of money, but I'm hearing from what they're saying that more teachers than not seem to have participated at the levels and are really excited about it. And I feel like in a time where we're making their class sizes bigger and there are things that are outside of our control, maybe giving them some curriculum that is building excitement and getting students more involved, is something small that we can do for the teachers in a way to help, bolster the things that are going on in the classroom. And we can't drop 5 kids from their classrooms, but maybe we can give them a more engaging and a more updated science. And I think especially I liked the point about how it really tied into the UDL learning that we're pushing throughout the district. So this seems like a really good marriage of concepts and bringing them in. And so I'm comfortable.
Let me just interrupt for one thing, because I appreciate, Jessica, everything that you had just asked too. And it dawns on me that, again, we don't talk about new curriculum that often. And so we've been talking about this cycle so that then it becomes a more consistent process for the district that will, I think, hopefully last for years and years and years, right? One of the things that I think would be helpful is if we did share with you how this compares to other curriculum that we purchase. And I will say, in my 13 years being here, we purchased the TCI curriculum a long time ago, and we didn't really get into that didn't go well at that moment in time for various reasons. But then the EL curriculum that we have most recently purchased for the elementary schools is more expensive than this. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but I will share that for context so that then I think that's a fair thing for all of you to kind of understand. If you're talking about purchasing a brand new curriculum for grades K to 8, what should you be expecting, right? Which I think would be helpful. And I can get, whether you decide to vote tonight or whether I can just get that information to you. I can get it to you this week, yeah.
I have 400 and something in my head.
It was
For
the
thing.
EL.
Yeah, I was
the
expecting like
The EL
300,000.
curriculum was more expensive.
Yeah, and that was
than
just K to
Just
5.
K to 5, yeah.
Students do that every day as opposed
They
to
do.
science. It's not.
But I just think, and
Science is
that's where we can say though, but is one more important than the other? But yes, you were right. It is, that has a prescribed, when you talk about the ELA and even the math curriculum that exists at the elementary level, most of the curriculum companies say you have to do so many minutes a day for fidelity of this, and we know that science and social studies does not have that at the elementary level. Although we're not saying that one is more important than the other.
But as Dr. Kelly mentioned, there's the cross-curricular
That's
connections.
the
thing,
yeah.
If it's aligning to EL, and there's this, I mean, that's like that's the gift
gold zone.
of teaching when you have that blending happening. I mean, again, from the few discussions I've had with teachers, there's an infectious energy that again, in my 3 years, brief time here in the committee, I haven't heard about much to this. So, I feel confident in voting tonight. I also, I have a lot of colleagues in different districts that have used Open SciEd, and they also echo its merits, so.
That's nice to
I
hear.
was gonna say, it's similar, if our curriculum coordinators are speaking for the people in their departments, and it's that kind of praise, I would, and that support, I would certainly support it. Yeah.
Just curious, is there a time span that curriculum is usually used for in the district, or do we have a certain parameter that we look at?
That's what we're going to be sharing with you, because I will say, and both Chris and
They're
Julie are
nodding their
smiling, we have not articulated a specific curriculum expectation in terms of review timelines until now. And that's what we've done this year, and the curriculum coordinators have done an excellent job looking at how other districts have been able to do this successfully, what DESE thinks that a curriculum review cycle should look like. And so that's one of the things that will be shared with you this spring, will be the Westford Public Schools curriculum review cycle.
7
which
years?
It's, well, that's what we're talking about right now, is the 7-year plan. DESE
each subject, isn't it?
suggests 10 years. We
Okay.
went back and forth, and we'll kind of talk through like the conversations that everybody had, and how what you'll also see is that every single content area is identified in this cycle, so that then they have a plan as to when can you expect this to be reviewed, and how long does implementation typically take, and then how long would you expect to continue to use it before you start considering alternatives and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can I add to that, Chris?
Please.
We really have talked a lot about the fact that in 7 years, that does not automatically mean, another big heavy purchase or
Right.
something like that. It's like,
That was my next
the
question.
7-year process includes just the data analysis. Is this curriculum meeting
How's it working?
our students' needs?
Right.
Do we need to do a little bit of revision? Is it a light lift? Is it a heavy lift? That would be the 7-year cycle. So what Chris is speaking about is not necessarily a 7-year purchase
Yeah.
cycle.
Right.
It's a 7-year curriculum evaluation. Is this program that we have for our students working, and how can we tailor it to meet everyone's needs?
Great.
The EL education was $380,000 in year 1 and $170,000 in year 2.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I'm kind of getting the impression, I think we're
Think we're
okay to
ready
take
to
the
vote.
vote this evening.
I'd make a motion
Yep.
to
Go first. Tom.
approve
Um,
the selection.
Okay,
Seconded.
that's a second from Bill, so we'll say all in favor. Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Dr. Kelly and Dr. Jeffco, thank you for bearing with us. And Dr. Chu, I think just because obviously the money associated
Yeah.
with the vote and it being
Follow up.
unexpected, so we needed to do a bit more due diligence in this conversation, so we appreciate that. Thank you for your patience.
And as you did mention quietly earlier on, I think Julie and Chris, I think we can expect maybe in the spring, one of our school committee tours can be looking at what Open SciEd looks like in practice.
Yeah.
We did it for EL and it was great
Right.
to actually see, to really kind of understand
yeah.
it in action, so. that will be
Thank you
great.
both.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll give you 9 minutes on the STIP to
Yeah,
finish.
I don't know. I think we can make up the time, potentially.
Famous last words.
I know, so I'm gonna just I did share, hopefully it's in the packet.
It is.
I did share with you an updated ISTIP. So I first want to say that I did highlight the changes, again, reminding everybody that the bold text is what is new this year from the previous ISTIP. And then I highlighted in a color, the yellow just seemed to be weird, so I tried to find one that might live within that color scheme. Just the initial changes. So I did change the develop targeted goals to develop targeted guidelines based on the conversation that we had last week. And then when we were talking about it and considering the conversations about the feedback from the initial in-person meeting that we had, and I received a great email from CPAC. The CPAC president, Melissa Mackey, specifically emailed me on behalf of CPAC, and it was very thoughtful and talked about the surveys that they've been doing, the themes that have been coming up regularly in their conversations, and and honestly suggested that language for 2.5 and said, I see how this could fit right in the ISTIP because it meets the needs that we're talking about, and I think I like the way that it's written, that it encompasses all supports and it encompasses special education, but it is not limited to special education. And so that, based on the conversation, Valerie, we were having about accountability and about different things that we were hearing from folks.
Behavior, yeah.
Right. I was like, okay, well, what if similar to this technology theme that we have for initiatives, it's not a whole objective, but it's an initiative that is supporting those other three larger objectives. I was like, maybe there's an addition, although communication was mentioned in some of the other initiatives. I'm like, what if there's just an additional initiative that I think is something that, again, when we're looking at a 3-year plan, the schools and the district can as well too, but the schools can find specific action items that work for them. And so when we were looking at talking about our curriculum and instruction and assessment, and we talk about that engagement piece, are we really doing the best we can as a district to celebrate student work that the community at large has a true understanding of what's happening in schools now? And I kind of even joke sometimes about that, sometimes we'll talk to seniors at Westford Academy and they don't even really know what's going on in elementary schools anymore. So they'll talk about their experiencing in elementary school. And I'm like, it's a different world now than when they were in elementary school, right? And so the more we share all of that, find authentic ways for that to happen, that's what 1.5 is,
Yep.
right? 2.5 is really taking that language that CPAC shared and making sure that we're talking about meaningful participation for all students. And I think, although, and Jessica, you had actually asked me this question, it was almost like it's really broad, right? But I think it allows for some specific action items to come from it that I think will be helpful, right? And then when we were talking about the feedback about accountability, and sometimes I was like, you know what? Maybe we just need to do a better job really communicating what the expectations are if we're utilizing collaborative problem solving and restorative justice. And what does that look like? What do the outcomes look like? And it doesn't change the fact that we're never going to be talking about individual student discipline with anybody other than the parents and the student, right? But if everybody, including students, staff, and families, are really clear if we're assessing the impact, so we've been doing it. So let's say, okay, how has this impacted the environment? And if we are hearing sometimes from staff who feel like there's not, consequences or follow through, and we're hearing that from families and or for students, then are we protecting student privacy, but yet everybody trusts that the environment is such that behaviors are being addressed? And so I feel like that's kind of the spirit of that third initiative, which to me seemed to encompass that conversation. So I share that with you for your thoughts.
I like that one on that last one, because I have had those conversations as well with some friends who are teachers as well. And I think maybe it can sometimes get lost that these are tools, they're not the only way.
That's right.
They're maybe the starting point, they're not always the thing. So I think looking at that and kind of making sure that consistency and there is that true understanding across the district would definitely be helpful, I think. So, and I love the additions on the communication, so. Any other thoughts?
I had just sent you that follow-up thought about 3.3.
Yes.
Did you have a chance to?
Well, the conversation that we had talked about, because again, I acknowledge that, I said it in one thing that it was kind of being developed in, and then Tom was talking about, wanting to hold on to securing those resources.
Okay.
And so that's when I was like, well, why don't we just add a 0.5 instead of replacing something?
Okay.
Because I feel like now 1.3 and 3.3 are still, they're not both, they're things that we need to continue to work on. And so I didn't want to replace them.
As long as you see what they break down into as like specific things, so that we don't get to the end of 3 years and go.
I'd say what
What was that?
Agreed,
Yeah.
agreed.
That's
I do
okay.
see it. I do see how those things, I feel like, I see how they can be leading into school improvement plans and how they can be connecting to how we're making sure that we have the resources that we need.
Yeah, and I mean, the self-regulation piece of it ties back into that conversation
Right.
too for 3.5. So, I think, I'm not saying it doesn't need, there's obviously work to continue there.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think it also speaks well when we talked about, some of the progress that you'd made for your goals relative to sense of belonging and engagement. We talked about Tier 3 restorative practices training
Right.
being conducted.
Right.
We talked about Title I families being provided access to collaborative problem-solving training modules. This seems like a further continuation of
Right.
that, the work that we're building, so.
Right.
Motion to approve the strategic district improvement plan for FY 2027 to FY 30.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank
Look
you.
at that, you brought it back, 8:09.
Right?
Good job, guys. Now, the next item that obviously we're going to just, skip through, nice, short and sweet. So while Val's bringing up the slides, just to kind of lay the groundwork. So this is something that came out of our retreat over the summer, talking about creating a survey to connect with the community and to really kind of give the school committee maybe a kind of an insight into families, how we can better serve a school committee. So it was, and Jess and I, as we started to develop this, had a lot of conversation even at the beginning of, who is this survey for? Is it staff? Is it families? Is it the wider community? And really, we kind of said, starting off this, we're the school committee, we serve the families, and that really was kind of where we needed to focus. Because as you can see, there was a lot of questions, there was a lot of editing, trying to figure out what areas to ask and kind of what is really stuff within school committee purview and what we can work on. And so we didn't just throw it together, we didn't just throw it into ChatGPT. There's been a lot of man hours gone into this and a lot of conversations. So and you guys had all seen the questions. So hopefully tonight we'll kind of get an insight into where we are. And there's some really interesting data, and excited to kind of look into it. And so I will say one of the things that was coming through was that people want nice visuals and infographics and simple explanations. So we tried to take that feedback and put it into our slideshow. So with the help of numerous, I will say, AI applications to try and, be a bit more efficient with their time and stuff, but also we've kind of used different things, but this has very much gone through 2 human being lenses. Data has been checked and triple checked. This is what we came up with. So the first slide there, just to kind of say, we had 361 responses during our time that it was open, which came to a rate of 11.3% response rate based on kind of the numbers of families in the district. And from my research and checking with various people, anything above 10% typically when you're doing a survey is kind of considered a good baseline of data. So I feel like we can actually take some, that the data and the information we're getting tonight has value with it. We just was curious with the years of residence and obviously the grades of students, and then you'll see at the bottom the relationship with WPS. Obviously it doesn't equal 100% because obviously some people can be in 2 categories. So I don't know, Jess, then if you want to chat about the next slide then.
Sure. So I think for me, this was a lovely visual that Notebook gave us. So, but I think it really summed up the results that we heard, which was that, there's information coming from a lot of different places. Yes, most people seem to be using the principal and superintendent emails, so that's great. But they're also using, Facebook, talking to friends and family, and maybe our website, maybe our school committee meetings. Some of those patterns change depending on how long you've been here. But I think no matter who you are, there was a sentiment that, there's a lot coming at you. And I thought this was a nice quote that sort of each school has its own webpage and, each principal has their own newsletter. So you just really get the sense that it's kind of a very localized, set of information at each school. So when we asked people what would they like to be true about our communication, I was actually really surprised that the consensus seemed to be email. People still wanted more email, but they wanted it to be TLDR, short written summaries, infographics if possible, maybe some charts and graphs, but just make it easy for me to skim, give me something to click on so I can find more information. But it was surprising that 75% of people are trying to access this information frequently. So it's not for lack of interest, but it's just needing to have that in a more streamlined format. One. I guess
you
so.
go first.
Yeah, so kind of in keeping with that theme, people are aware of a lot of the things going on in the district, but that doesn't reliably lead to engagement because of a number of factors that cause people to kind of drop off. The information might be hard to find. Maybe they're too busy, to take in all those sources. It's too technical. But there was also a small minority of the, write-in comments that talked about feeling like it doesn't matter if I pay attention or if I know about it, what's it going to change, which I thought was so interesting.
The earlier draft of these slides had a quote that had stopped me in my tracks. When I looked at the raw data, it was, if I felt my knowing could make a difference.
Yeah.
And I sat with that for a really long time, right? How can we improve on that? So, sorry to interrupt you.
No, that was exactly my feeling too. Yeah, that even if we manage to get the information out to folks, and they hear it, how are we helping them to then engage with us and feel like they have an impact? So
Can I ask a question about when 3% of the people said that voice has no impact? Is that again a
That's
feeling
kind of in
of
the comments.
So is that a feeling of people like no one has listened to me, or that they're thinking that nobody you know what I'm saying, the difference, people who are saying I have tried and or people who just don't necessarily think that they would be listened to? I didn't know if there was a
I
difference.
did not get much of an active, I have tried, there were people actively trying to follow, like going to town meeting and things, but not actively trying to engage with us and finding that didn't.
It was more like, what's the point? It doesn't make a difference.
A number of people said they didn't hear about decisions until after they were made. That was a theme, so I think there's some of that.
Okay.
It wasn't a large majority. It was obviously a certain, group coming through the comments, but it
Right.
just was kind of an interesting point to note.
Yeah, and so, as we look at those comments, and I like that Catherine's included the number of responses, just to be clear, not everybody left us a note, but,
Yeah.
of those who did, as we said, they wanted concise updates, that TLDR sort of let me decide what additional information I want to look for. I appreciated this middle one, because I feel this way too. Please don't just rely on Facebook. There's a lot going on Facebook, and it's wonderful that people can connect and reach each other, but some of us maybe are not on Facebook as much as others and maybe would like to have other sources. So I appreciate that very much. And, there's a sentiment that I think, as we've talked about, people want to know that their voice is being heard and taken into account in these decisions. This is a great quote that exemplifies that, stop talking at us and talk with us. And this is like Valerie said, I saw this one and I was like, oh, like, we're trying. We want to talk with you. So, but why are we not having success, and why are people not feeling that that's, the goal for us too? So.
So the next fun one's budget.
Yeah, I'll let you take over.
So the kind of the next, the first initial questions were kind of talking about information sources in general about the district. This obviously then we were asking them questions specifically about information sources on the budget. And so I think it kind of speaks for itself. Only 19% of respondents found it easy to locate or interpret the budget. And again, it was kind of a mix of where they're getting their sources, but the three top ones, which I thought was interesting, they're all within like a percentage or two. You've got the district website, school committee meetings, and Facebook, which again, as Jess kind of alluded to, Facebook doesn't, outside of Valerie's posts apparently, isn't necessarily always like, official data, or can be interpreted in a different way. So
Town forums and
and stuff. So to see like kind of coming in those kind of top three, that Facebook is a place for budget information, I think was kind of just interesting to
So my
see.
stance on any kind of social media posting around that is all it should be is a link back to the district site. It
Yeah.
should be a link back to the source.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Drive that. So,
Yeah.
but I will say, as someone who has stared at budgets now, there is no easy way to interpret budgets, but there are things that we can probably do to
Oh, yeah,
try to
Yeah.
help. Right?
yeah,
So-
100%.
Seeing this slide, right, that glaring number, about 23%, I don't follow the budget. How do we turn that bar
The other way around.
into the top categories, right? And push those sliders forward, I think that's the target right there.
And
Yeah.
just to clarify, I mean, I know you've probably hopefully all
And,
looked
you
at
know,
it.
and we may not get any, some people are like, no, I'm not gonna follow the budget. I
Yeah.
don't want to follow the budget, but,
Yeah.
can we sway that?
And so we've given no solutions this evening. This is all just the data. We talked about, like, do we put action items? And we're like, no, this is kind of, so it's, file it away and have a think. So yeah, that was the thing, how can we help those families who find the budget confusing or kind of opaque? And I added there on the thing, we had people on a scale rating, 1 being not very clear, number 5 being very clear, and kind of within those response open comments, so about 30% of respondents kind of gave general open comments to that. I kind of retweaked that word. It was findability. I kind of thought
Adding it to the vernacular. I
it
like
kind
that.
of captured what we were trying to say, either like where to access, how do I, different things like that. Time, again, was just people like, I don't have the time to sit down and watch our meetings, or, go through 40 pages of spreadsheets. And then there was that kind of 20% of the complexity. And again, some of that kind of voice of impacting budget. And I think this is Jess's favorite graph. I'll leave Jess chat
Well,
about
it
this.
really spoke to me too as a new school committee member, and sort of learning the ropes and what all goes into establishing our budget. I think it's true that the community at large may only see certain moments that pop up when there are really big things going on, the override, staff cuts, your rising taxes. And we get to those places because of all the things that are happening down below that we don't necessarily, get a lot of interest in, right, from folks. But how can we help them understand that there are so many different pieces that we decide every day, and that they could, be contributing to those conversations that then ultimately lead us to those bigger decisions.
Yeah. So then the next area we spoke about in the survey was kind of just to touch on student progress. And so we asked our families to kind of rate on a scale, I think it was again of 1 to 5, how they felt they were in terms of getting information on their students' academic progress, and then we also said their well-being. And I thought it was interesting how we kind of were able to break it down here. It's kind of averaging out. Obviously, the average elementary K-2 academic comment was 3.63. You'll see middle school and high school. I know Roots, we actually had, I think it was 6, we don't, for a small program, but we had quite a lot of respondents who were in that program. So I think that's great for what is only in its second year, I think now, that, we're, and I know it's a smaller program, but I think it just shows, there's good quality coming through there. So I just thought it, interesting touch point.
And can I say, just reading between the lines in the comments, I got the sense that people are almost a little bit surprised that we asked about well-being. They're like, oh yeah, I don't know where I would find that. Like, I get a, progress report or something, but like, I'm not sure everybody had thought to assess how well they got that information from their teachers. So.
Yeah. And so this was, again, kind of an interesting one. If you remember the question, we asked families what was kind of the most helpful communications, and we asked them to rank it so they could choose a number of tools. And as you can see, really the top 2 are that direct kind of teacher connection between kind of emails from teachers or school staff, that direct communication, and the parent-teacher conferences are coming in at the second highest rating. So again, it just shows you that kind of relationship building and that frequent, I think, two-way communication with the teachers and specific school staff seems to be key in, kind of creating that information flow on student progress. And so then again into the open comments in this area. So we had about 40% of the respondents actually give us some quotes or comments on this. And again, also as well to note with the comments, sometimes they don't necessarily always add up to 100%, because you can have one quote hit across 2 or 3 different themes. And so thankfully the AI programs is able to help, because I wasn't going to sit down and hand code all the thing. But looking at it, we were seeing, kind of 31% of the comments were kind of connected to conferences, personal feedback, data visibility, the secondary gap. That was a really interesting one to read some of the comments about how, the feeling like they go from a very, maybe heavy, in touch connection at the elementary level, and how it kind of drops almost at that secondary level. So again, just interesting feedback.
The comment on all threes is interesting, because it took a while for me to recognize that a 4 in the middle of the year didn't make sense, because that is exceeding grade level expectation, right? And well, now maybe that's not what we want to be doing. At mid-year, we're really striving for that for the end of the year. So that kind of, I can understand that there's still, it's still a mental shift that many parents are still of the generation of A's, B's, C's, and D's, or percentages, right? So,
or I think there's another way to explain it, and I think that I know we have a group working on kind of student reports and stuff. So sharing the stat, and they can have all the comments, and I think is powerful as well for them to have as they continue that work moving forward. So what we've all been waiting for, start times. This, again, this was something we'd always committed. It was always kind of part of the plan to check in with our families at this point in the year regarding the start time shifts. And I was really excited to kind of see, I think the data we were getting through here. So in the graph again, it shows kind of 1 being very challenging to 5 being very easy in terms of just that shift of managing all the logistics. And then you'd seen we'd kind of broken out in the second and third questions after that was, well, how did it impact your morning versus how did it impact your evening? Was it just a natural shift in time, or did you have to engage with more childcare or other logistics? And so 75% of all of our respondents said that it was literally just a shift in their routine, and that kind of didn't require other impacts. And then you'll see 11% needed increased childcare in the morning and 8% in the afternoons. So that was quite, I was quite happy to see that one. And the whole point of our start times was to see about sleep. And we know this is kind of a tricky one to measure, but we just did try and kind of give it a general idea. So we asked the families to kind of just give us a sense of kind of what sleep. And what I think is really interesting is where we're actually breaking this down. If we look at that bottom bar, which is the high school, which is really where the science and data is what was driving us to look at this change about teenagers needing more sleep. I think I'm working out, it's about 66%, I think, of families are suggesting that their teenagers are getting more sleep.
Net positive.
Yeah.
That's great.
So that was amazing to see.
Actually, I just want to be
Yeah.
nitpicky, but we
Go
can't
first.
necessarily say they're getting more sleep, but they're
Yes.
sleeping later.
They're sleeping
So-
later.
so
Sorry,
we don't know
you're
what's
right.
happening on the other.
Yes, true.
I was going to say, the
Yeah.
30 plus minutes earlier, does that mean was the question, are they going to bed earlier or are they waking up earlier?
It was a wake up time.
Okay.
Yeah. We weren't asking
Nighttime.
nighttime
Yeah,
routine.
okay.
Yeah. I think what we were trying to do with this question was suss out the kind of what we can control is the start times and the bus start
Yep,
times and
yep.
stuff, which is
No, that
just
helped.
to suss it out. Yeah.
I was curious. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So then this is where we kind of start, chart looks at the actual comments, the responses. So 60% of people who took the survey did give a response. And I did break it down more towards the bottom. So, it was 83 of the comments, which was 38% of the comments, which was in fact 23% of all respondents, to just try and, put it into perspective. Had very positive comments. Some were, what is classed in the negative is just that they didn't like the change. I mean, you've got samples of quotes from the survey in the boxes above. The mixed is, it was a mix like, it was good, but this, or, we appreciate this, but if we could tweak this. So it wasn't like fully positive, but it wasn't completely in the negative camp. And then the neutral again was just kind of like, yeah, it's okay, or it's fine.
Can I ask, are these 216 responses from middle school and high schools only?
No, it's across
Across the
yeah,
district? Okay.
yeah. Because obviously, buses were changed and stuff, so that makes sense. And then what was kind of flagging in that red box, you'll see on the bottom, was a number of, like, that theme that was coming through was just kind of more on the buses. So there was a number of comments of, we love the later start time, my students getting more sleep, but the bus has been a tricky component.
I think we've all heard from that from different families.
Yeah, yeah. But, I think the takeaway, it overall seems to be very positive about the actual start time itself, which was good. So then we had one here thing on the calendar, which again, we kind of, we were hearing conversations. And so we just asked families about the impact of those kind of midweek full days off or early release days and kind of their schedule preference, bearing in mind, you know, we've a number of working families in the district. And so the bottom left chart, you can see, you know, 1 being no impact at all, and then 5 being a significant impact on those days. And then we obviously asked kind of preference, did they, so it was quite a large, nearly 56% of respondents were saying, you know, their preference would be if we could have it next to a day off or a weekend. So I think that kind of just gives, you know, a little bit insight into, you know, trying to make the calendar work for all people as best we can.
That's interesting to me, just that you don't normally see that. You normally see like the 3s are the highest group, and then but that you have 1 and 5
Yeah.
as the 2 highest.
Yeah.
They're basically extremes.
Polarized.
Yeah.
Usually it's the bell curve,
Right.
It's
yeah,
about-
yeah.
yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
I think the low percent for same day was interesting, because I think what we heard from a lot of the schools is that having the consistency of the same day could be helpful.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
opposite of really, it was the lowest scoring option.
Yeah.
Necessarily from the families.
I think part of that, though, is, and I can see it, you know, if it's on a holiday weekend, if it's adjacent to a holiday weekend, oh, well, that just, we get out on the road a little bit earlier, and we're not,
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with childcare, right? As opposed to the shifting Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you know, well, now who am I getting to
Yeah.
to handle that day this week, right?
In other words,
So-
I think if the choice was
Yeah.
rotating day versus same day, you might get a different outcome. But if
Yeah.
it's, do I want this to make a long weekend? Yes,
Yes.
versus
Yeah.
routinely on a Wednesday.
And do people who say no preference, do they just not like the idea of them at all, right? Like, are they the same people who were like, it's a significant impact, so I have no preference, I just,
I just hate them all.
and you're like,
No good.
right, so I'm like, I don't know if that helps.
We did talk, you could do a whole other survey
can,
just
yep.
on the calendar, and
sure.
and again, it was like, let's just take a snapshot, and
Yeah.
if
It's helpful.
if we need further discussion or insight, we can. But yeah, I mean, like, we didn't ask the question of, you know, have you a stay-at-home
Right.
family member or versus working parents and stuff. So I do think there is scope, but it's just a snapshot. So then on their other feedback, you know, we had that very open question at the very end. So 45% of our respondents decided to share their thoughts. And so this, again, we kind of rejigged. So, you know, there was 25% of those comments were genuine, just pure positive and appreciation for staff and school committee, and in general the district. The majority was the constructive feedback of, we love this, but this would be great, or this could be better, and then obviously the concerns, frustrations at the bottom. And the kind of the topics that were actually coming up in that was the calendar, half days, budget classes and size, communication and transparency. If you looked at the comments throughout the whole thing, there were, you know, bus was also included, but just in this specific question, on number 8, these were kind of the topics coming through, the add-ons. So I just wanted to, like, you know, it was really important that we had our parent voice, our family voice coming through, and so these were just some of the bright spots that were popping up. WPS and school committee is doing an excellent job maintaining the levels of quality. You're doing a great job. Makes AM and PM logistics so much easier. So some is, you know, the new start times are fantastic. A great mood improvement. So thank you. I like the bus. I like that the bus comes at 7 instead of 6:30. That sounds like a win for me. Huge thanks to all the teachers and principals who work tirelessly. So there's a real mix of comments there to just kind of show that there was some positive coming through. And so really on slide 19, I think we did well to keep it to 19 slides, is really kind of what do we do with what we've heard? You know, is there short-term action items that we feel we'd like to look at between now and June? Is there more long-term action items that maybe, you know, we bring to our school committee retreat, and think of longer term? And then also, you know, based on the information we have now, like I was saying, you know, we could share some of the information with the student progress team or the negotiations team, or, you know, so it's kind of just having a think about what we do with this.
Dr. Chu, can you remind me or remind us, do you guys have ongoing communication with the bus company about some of the concerns, to be looking already to next year, how to maybe do what we're doing better with the lessons that have been learned.
So, two things. We have ongoing conversations with the bus company about concerns
Yes.
when they come up,
Yep.
right? We have not been talking since we made all of the adjustments and all the changes, and what we were seeing was that there was consistency. We reduced the times. Now, if there's information within this survey that it warrants us looking at something, we can, but no, we're not, we haven't been looking to see, okay, what, because we haven't had
Feedback.
additional concerns
Okay.
outside of one-off, like, this is an issue on a bus. Right.
Right. Just, I mean, if we're starting to, if we're hearing again overcrowding, you know, is there data to actually back that up, or is it a perception of overcrowding, right? And
No, I think
there's
that's
two different
important. I think,
things.
yeah, like that's, would be something that would be new information, because I haven't been told that there was overcrowding, right?
I do hear it from my high school students sometimes.
But
Not
is
all
it
the time.
I think I'm
overcrowding
gonna go-
compared
I'm
to
gonna go-
last year?
That's only
where-
Or I'm gonna go back to your point, is that a perception? Is that,
Yeah.
let's look at the actual data.
Yeah.
Let's look
My
and see, is that
student
just-
last year had a whole
Yeah.
seat to themselves, and now
They share.
Yeah.
They have to share, right?
Right.
You know,
It's a good point,
Yeah.
yeah.
so.
I will say, as I was going through it, I was like, maybe this feels like we could do another week of capturing kind of just the data again, to just kind of do a check-in of what times our bus is picking up, how long is the route, you know, bus ridership, if we can do that, I don't know, to do
And I
it,
think
but,
perhaps, ridership, right?
Yeah.
How many students are actually riding the bus as opposed to getting a ride as opposed to last year because of
Yeah.
maybe a shift time? Like, it
Well,
didn't,
it
doesn't
changes-
impact my morning routine as a parent anymore, except for, like, I still have to leave at the same time. I'm just not going
I
by.
think you
the
still have to
academy,
count
right?
like a seat for every bus, so even if
Right.
you're not riding it, but you have a pass for that bus, I
Right.
think that's what you have to look at. Is
But it's
the
also helpful, you
registration.
do, if,
Yeah.
whether there's availability, but I think it's also
Yeah.
helpful to look at, again, what are the perceptions based on the season too, right? Because we know that just 6 through 12, every single season changes the afternoon ridership, right? When students are doing things in the afternoon that they might not have been doing at another time, and it could also impact, I think there's also just a difference in when people are driving in the morning and expecting people to take the bus home and things like that. So I think it's things that we could continue to collect seasonally.
Yep.
Even, we've kind of missed our window to do ridership with the capstone.
Yeah.
So with
Oh, gosh,
seniors
yeah.
got off the bus, it's not going to be a super
thought
Do
accurate.
we have the power to bring them back for a week? I mean, is that an option?
I do
We'd
I
be
do
the
think
most
though,
popular school
We're gonna
committee
put that in your hands.
ever.
we do know how many seniors were on the buses.
True,
Who
actually.
So
like
we
bought
can, we can,
passes,
we
yeah.
can say,
And
Yeah.
I'm sure there are a lot of seniors who don't ride the bus as well.
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
it just means
Yeah.
it's got a,
But
it's
it's
got like
we
a
have the
Yeah,
data.
driving
We
themselves.
can
Yeah,
pull
yeah.
the data.
Yeah.
You're right.
It's kind of there for you guys to think about, and we can discuss further. The big thing I would say to you is go read the survey. You can have some fun with it too. I have to say, I was using a number of different AI ones as well to kind of go back and look at different things and crunch numbers and ask questions and go back in and look at the raw data again. So it is really interesting to kind of go in and look at it. And even if to just read the comments, I mean, it's actually not difficult to kind of just scan through them and get a sense of what they're saying. I think it was, I have to say, I did, good and bad. I really appreciated people took the time to kind of to do it.
Well, it's funny because I've said this recently, I need to know the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
Right? Because if I don't know the ugly, I don't know what to fix.
Yeah.
Right? And if I don't know the good, I don't know what to lean on.
Yeah.
So
I think this
that's
is,
important.
it's a nice time frame for us to sit with it, to read it, to let it marinate.
Yeah.
We approach June, we have our end of the year summit,
Yeah.
If the firehouse will host us again. But I think it's a good time, you know, it would be a good time to
Yeah.
return on that, you know, as well as any other meetings coming forward, but, you know,
Yeah.
really to help us chart, you know, some direction points for next school year, so.
I suppose the one thing is to kind of then really, you know, think about, and maybe we can circle back on it, is do we want to get this bus data at least this spring? So, you know, I don't want us collecting data if we don't feel we need it or aren't, you know. So it's really, I suppose, just that's the kind of, the initial thought for me is, what's that short-term action now? Well, you know, if we're-
I did, sorry, just to jump
Yeah.
in, I did go back and look at our goals.
Yeah.
And we had written, use data and feedback, under the start times goals, it was use data and feedback to guide adjustments.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at this as a data point or input, it does make sense to think about whether this triggers a real adjustment.
Yeah, I guess one question, Dr. Chu, and maybe, you know, your discussions with Jen Piper, any discussions with D-Bus is like, are there things that you feel might need adjusting in your opinion, or?
I will say, after that original adjustments that we made based
Yes,
on, okay,
right,
these are the
early on.
concerns that we have.
Mhm.
Can we decrease the amount of time that students are on the buses? Is the span between the two schools, between the two different levels, is that too long? Can we shorten that? After making all of those adjustments, then the bus company nor the administrators have said, ooh, we need to fix
Yeah.
X, right? That has not come up. So, we haven't been looking to see, are there additional adjustments that need to be made? If, I know one of the things that we talked about was, we knew that the winter creates its own challenges, right? So I do feel like that could happen any year, any system. So the idea of resetting again and checking again, getting the pulse in the spring, kind of makes sense to say, okay, are things still
Yeah.
where we thought they were? Has anything changed? Do we feel like this is the same model? I mean, they tend to, you know, adjust the routes a little bit every year, but not, it's not a massive shift. But I think that idea of saying, okay, wait a second, is there anything that we should be doing? I think we can look at that this spring and talk about it, but I don't know if there'd be major changes that would be made.
No, I don't think there'd be major changes at this point, but I think we did make a commitment to monitor throughout the year, right? And yes, we made that adjustment on the fly because we saw the need and we didn't want to wait till next year. But I think that it would be good to get another checkpoint to make sure that we aren't having things that are just slipping through and people just go, we're just dealing with it, right?
Yeah.
I think it could inform some guidelines maybe we give to D. Like maybe we identify 2 or 3 bus routes that still are on the upper end of either volume of quantity of students and or time on the bus, to say, going into next year, these are 3 routes we'd really like you guys over the summer to be to try to see as we go into next year, could we make any further adjustments on targeted routes that we're seeing that are still on the higher end, potentially.
I think it also, that information also informs us of, do we ever get to the point where we need an extra bus on a route, or, you know, and I think that's valuable information
We
to have.
underutilized one bus this
Right.
year, right?
If I remember correctly,
If I
yeah.
remember correctly, we
We budgeted for X and we are actually
one
running
bus
X
less,
minus
which
1.
was great because we got the money back. But
Right.
maybe we want to go to them and say, next year we want you to use the last bus so that these 3 routes get, or maybe we'll look at it and things have, like, kids are getting on and off the bus quicker now because they're more used
They're
to,
used to it,
you know,
yeah.
being in the right place at the right, like a lot of things could have shifted from September. Maybe some of the routes are not
Yeah.
as problematic.
So I think I'm kind of getting the sense that it's something we would like to ask Dee to kind of do, to just capture that data in the next couple of weeks, and that we can maybe share it with the committee.
One other
Jess?
data point that I just thought of, because there were a number of comments in the survey about concerns still around bullying on the bus and incidents. Do we record the number of incidents that are reported on the buses? Could we look at that last year versus this year and see if there was a change?
Yes, he says.
With a
Because
big
I
question
was
mark?
quick to say, yes, we have it, and then I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know if we keep it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
let me,
true.
but when
good.
something is reported, yes, we have we just the way in which we're communicating, right? That so let me think about how that might be captured over previous years and whether that's held or whether it's not.
That was one of the concerns about the combined
Yeah.
Grassroots.
Yeah.
age groups.
Yeah.
And
right?
I think one of the things we could.
I will say, because anecdotally, again, the principals who deal with all of those concerns are not seeing an increase.
And not more so at the younger grades or
No.
anything.
But I think it's a good question, and so I think it would be interesting to say, okay, wait a second, how many bus referrals did you have last year? How many do you have this year?
Yeah.
Right? Is it still just based on your age group, like or is it because the range is now, there have been a couple of instances where I know principals from two different buildings were talking to each other because it was students in two different grades who were talking to each other, and that isn't typically what had happened in the past, right? But I'll ask them that.
But the question then is also, maybe in that instance, is are we double checking that we're actually seating the bus the way we intended it, of kindergartners at the front and fifth graders at the back? And,
Yeah.
to work your way up, because,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I will say, there are
Yeah.
times when we are like, these are the expectations, and then wait, that isn't what's
What's
happening. Yeah,
happening,
no,
yeah.
I think it's fair.
And
Yeah.
to be fair, sometimes it's a driver.
it's a, yeah.
Right? And the
Yeah,
driver
it's a
can't go,
substitute
okay,
or-
let's sit the bus here for 5 minutes while I get you in your proper seat, right? I
Yeah.
can see that being a problem. The only other data piece around start times that I had said I'd be interested in to monitor was tardies.
Already on it,
Exactly.
Tom.
Okay. The comparison of previous years, the
I'm going to ask the
trending. So-
principals to
Yeah.
share that when they come to talk about their school improvement plans. I just want it to be like, I don't want it to be so I'm like, hey, while you're coming to the school committee, why don't we
Yeah,
have that
and-
data?
And I think it's gonna be anecdotally, I'm not looking, oh, well, we had 10 this year as opposed to
No, I think you're
9
right.
last
No.
year, right?
Yep.
It's, overall, is it
The general takeaway.
positive,
Is there a
negative?
change? Is there not a change? Is there?
No
yeah.
change, right?
What is the context?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, no, I had sent Dr. Chu and Mr. Toomey, at least today, Principal Toomey. I knew that was a data point that we needed, so they're working on that.
Thank you.
And so,
Ladies, for putting that together. That
Yes.
was really helpful.
It was so interesting to read through the survey. I highly, highly encourage everybody to do that.
yeah, it's your homework for the weekend. Okay, so we will move on to our 8:40. Oh, we're not too bad, 8 minutes behind. And are handing over the policy work to the Finance Subcommittee.
Since this is like the last one, the last discussion point, and we are scheduled for a vote on these tonight, I do want to just take a minute, like, for the minutes and for the video record, sort of, to walk through, if I could figure out how to open these up without opening them up. To walk through the whole process. So we started with, hold on, here it comes. So there was two policies that covered sort of the development and the presentation of the budget. Through a really great discussion, I thought, the Finance Subcommittee decided that we would redline the entire original, both of those original policies. So P3201, which is up on the screen for a moment, and P3202, presentation of superintendent's budget, those would be both pulled down and removed. And our proposal is the draft of this new version, P3201, and that we're renaming the annual budget process. This, we thought, weaved both policies together into one place. We really updated it through some great discussions about what to match current practice. And, in the unlikely event that there is transitions or changes, that we wanted what we think is working right now between town partners, town manager, and our superintendent and school leadership, how that process is working well and to capture it in a policy. So that's how that came about. I think we need,
Did you have fun?
yeah, we had so much fun.
Great.
Do you,
So we
I'll
have to-
Move to waive the reading
There you
of
go.
the
Yeah.
policy,
Second.
both, let's do a both. Make
Yeah,
sure it's
of both, yeah.
of both.
Or all.
Of
The
Yes.
strike through.
Yeah.
strike through 3201, strike through 3202, correct? And then the new 3201.
And the new, and the updated, edited 3601.
Yeah.
There you go.
All three. All
Yes.
four.
So do we have a second, Shayna?
Second.
And all in favor to waive that second reading? There we go. Okay. Any further questions or discussion points?
I do want to just highlight that one of the changes I think that we made was we took out some of the more hard reference to has to be
Timing.
three
Yeah.
3 months and 2 days before X, and it was more in reference to timely, make sure we can make our legal requirements and not.
In that it's collaborative,
Right,
right?
yeah.
Like,
Collab-
you
but-
have an expectation and.
And it's public,
Right.
right? Like
Yeah.
you're making you're making a budget schedule and a calendar that town staff and school staff are working on, but then we share it.
But
you know,
I just
so
want to
if
make
there-
sure to
Yeah.
highlight that if anyone's really paying attention, that we're not
And we
taking
were-
the dates out to try to condense it. It's actually to make it so that we can
It's
make
workable.
it work.
Well, and we sort of greased the path to
Yes.
a changed town meeting date,
time, yeah.
potentially.
Yep.
So that we don't have to come back and edit a policy if town meeting date changes or anything like that. Is there a different vote we have to do to, like, pull one down and delete it? Or, like, we have done our part. We will, finance subcommittee will gladly give the process of the policy steps
Put you on
back.
policy next year, Val.
So please advise next steps.
We would just put it in the motion that we're accepting the changes and that we're removing that, which one, the
So
P3202, isn't
I was going
it?
to say 3202 is being removed.
Removed.
The other one is being fully updated.
Updated, yeah, so we would just put it in the motion to
Okay.
reflect so. So, do you want to do them separately so as not to confuse
Well, I didn't
people?
really say anything about 3601.
Okay.
Are you saying 3201 and 3202
Yeah.
together?
Or separate, yeah.
Why don't you just do that?
Okay, so I'll take a
Shannon's ready.
I'll take a motion then to approve, no, I'll take a motion then to, I suppose, cancel, delete 3202, and then also to take the updated version of P3201.
So moved.
And I have a
Second.
second, Bill, all in favour? There we go, that's your 7, and then 3601?
Yep, so this is just a little bit more streamlined and matches the MASC model policy and updated the,
Titles? Do we
That's-
update titles now?
Titles and
yeah.
and
I'm
kind
sorry, I don't think the current one is in the packet, but we've seen it before.
Yeah.
Yes, updated the job title was the original motivation,
Yeah.
but we matched the MASC policy,
and
model policy.
it matches more with the unified facilities department as well.
Yes, thank you.
So that was our discussion, if I recall.
So with that, I will take a motion to approve P3601, the updated version, I should say.
So moved.
Bill, in a second?
Second.
Thanks, Jess. All in favour? There we go. 7-0. Well done, guys. Woohoo!
Give someone else the glory.
Wasn't, so I'm taking it, I'm doing the Airtable doctoring now tomorrow then?
Yeah, please, can you just do whatever's next?
Okay. And then, last but not least, Val, on our Robinson School Building Project
yeah.
update.
Okay, now I lost that tab, hold on. Okay, so, you know, Dr. Chu and I have talked about having this be a recurring agenda item. It's another chance to catch the public. It's another way to keep all 7 of us aligned and in the loop. There has been some exciting milestones lately for the Robinson School Building project. There's 2 slideshows in the packet, and I'm gonna pick and choose what to walk you through. The first is, I want to just share that there was an initial study done on alternate sites. And you might be like, well, why are we looking at other alternate sites if we don't know what this project's outcome would be?
Yes, we have to.
But we basically have to. It's just part of the feasibility study to do due diligence and say, where in town would a school project be? And do some, what the architects and their geotech consultants call a desktop study, to just look at, are there restrictions, are there wetlands, stuff like that, how much buildable area is there? So that's regardless of a renovation, addition, repairs, or new construction, this is just a necessary step to kind of create a foundation of options. So Lindsay Richard, our vice chair, sort of does this for a living, and took the lead on, we have this long list of parcels in town that met a certain criteria for acres. Then we pared that down to things that were owned by the town, so we weren't getting into purchasing land and things like that. And 6 sites were identified for further study, so I'm gonna step through those. One of them is the fields across from Stony Brook School, so 2 Farmers Way. They're currently used as recreation fields for school teams and private organizations in town, like I think lacrosse practices there.
Cricket.
Baseball, yeah. So they definitely get used. We learned a lot about Article 97, which is a statewide restriction for recreation land, that if it's being currently used as recreation, you need state legislation approval to change it for another use. So it gets a little gray, it takes a lot longer, it impacts the schedule, so we were kind of, we're looking to like verify which parcels actually definitely have that protection, that restriction, but would probably label those as like less viable. So that's where 2 Farmers Way stayed. The land size is there, but we're verifying the restriction.
Even if you're replacing I'm not saying this particular site, but if you were,
Even if you said, I'll build the field
then
elsewhere,
I'd
you
knock
still have to
this.
remove that restriction from that
Gotcha.
parcel.
Is that the difference when people were looking at the Farmer Way property for like?
A pool.
Yeah, hockey rink,
I
was
don't
it
know.
because
We
it's
asked that
still
question, too.
recreational?
We're not sure.
I'm not
Didn't,
sure.
or
Outside of
they
the
just
scope.
didn't actually
Yeah, I
Go
don't
all
know.
the way
vet it
through.
out that
Yeah.
far?
We asked the question and we don't know.
Yeah. Next one
That was the
is
first
Jack Walsh Fields.
Same
So we were
situation.
trying to, I will say, once we kind of put together all of our alternate site information into a more digestible form as we start sharing this with a wider community, I do want to show that we were trying to look below 110. Because that is some feedback we continually hear. Why isn't there a school closer to or south of 110? So Jack Walsh Field made the list. Again, likely protected under Article 97, so
Has significant
viable.
technology implications by going all the way over there.
okay. Good to know. 2 other parcels that caught our eye that were owned by the town and were kind of centrally located are this 17 Main Street, and the next one is the adjacent parcel. However, both of those are designated water supply land, so those are not viable. And then this is like the very preliminary site analysis. So we're going to get a lot more information about, because Robinson and Abbott are the 2 primary sites, we're going to get a lot more information about existing conditions and the site analysis. But this was just to make sure that these sites still work as options and clearly are now becoming our primary choices based on the other ones being ruled out. But you can see that there are some considerations on the Robinson site. There's a priority habitat area. There's a stream that we talked about. There's like a 200-foot buffer zone that you can potentially appeal and get like a 100-foot buffer zone. Without taking down the building, there's only 5.5 acres of buildable land, so that would be sort of tight. Obviously then, if it was an addition, that makes sense. If it was phased construction, we would need to find, and we're using the space that the Robinson School stands, we would need to find some swing space for those students to be during construction. So there's a lot of considerations in this. The takeaway is that this still works, and we'll learn a lot more as we progress through the study. The other one obviously is the Abbott site. The field right outside would become 11.75 acres of buildable land. We don't believe that they trigger Article 97 because they are already owned by the school department. And we're doing just a couple final passes of double checking any deed restrictions and any other.
So as a summary, there isn't really, if Stony Brook or Farmers Way is under the Article 97, there really isn't another piece of viable land outside of Abbott and Robinson. Is that the
Yes.
hierarchical conclusion?
That's the headline.
They're the easier ones.
The
basically.
TLDR. I'm trying to get the TLDR, guys.
Yeah. So that's, again, it will come back up again. But
This
this
is
is
where
the
you're at.
information that was shared with the Robinson School Building Committee, so I want to make sure and share it with you. So several of you joined us for the April 9th community forum, where we started the project charter workshop. So there was a couple different areas of focus just to guide the discussions, and then like sort of brainstorming ideas under those big categories. And then attendees were given stickers to kind of assign point values, and the LaValle Brensinger team assigned those point values to the inputs and then regrouped based on themes. And then those are coming forward as suggested project goals. So the first one, Pillar 1, is built for all learners. I don't think any of these pillars are going to surprise you. These are, capturing input like a community of learners. We want to make sure, even if it is a 1,000-kid school or a 700-kid school, that there are small feels. Inclusivity. Do we have spaces that are designed for special education, sensory needs, small groups? All the sort of deficiencies that we know are in the current buildings came up as goals for the project. A lot of discussion about okay, well, we've seen enrollment changes, we've seen grade level changes, so how can this project be adaptable for the future? Safety, obviously. Excuse me. Pillar 2 is smart sustainability. I think what's really important here is that there is some amount of this baked in. I think it's LEED silver is like the you can't.
MSBA
Yeah.
will
It's
require.
Yes, you can't build a non-green-ish building anymore.
Right.
So
It's essentially code.
yes.
Right, it is building code at this point. You can't
And-
even build a house. You can't put an addition on without
Right.
meeting some of these certifications.
And
so.
Westford has its own building code goals to hit, so obviously we have our, climate, I'm blanking on the climate action plan.
CEA, the climate roadmap.
Yeah, so all of these would fit into that, but the discussions have really focused on demonstrating the ROI, making sure that these are practical, realistic, sustainable features, and not the buzzwords.
Yeah.
And then the pillar 3 is safe and accessible outdoor spaces. I think this is Jeff Goodwin's favorite favorite point. No enclosed courtyards.
Right.
Because we can't get the equipment in there to maintain it.
He spoke at length to me about that.
Yeah.
It's
But really
definitely-
making
But
sure.
he's not alone. A lot of people
Yeah,
spoke
yeah,
up
yeah,
about
yeah,
that,
yeah.
which is good.
And like a lot, traffic and safety, making sure that drop off and pick up is safe. Like a lot of this is very obvious,
Again, baked
not
in.
controversial.
It's what,
Yes, right.
yeah.
But I think there is this thread about how is this not sustainable, eco-friendly, but sustainable, like operationally,
Yes.
Yeah.
for the
Financially.
future. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, we don't want to be replacing our HVAC
Yeah.
in 5 years. when-
And this one's my favorite. Pillar 4, a plan for Westford. All of my little stickers end up in this area. And so consensus, I think there's some really valuable points here that is really reaffirming that the attendees and the building committee also got to the similar places with this, which is how do we make the case to voters across all ages, across all sort of households, that this is, whatever project we get to is cost-effective and educationally appropriate, builds in that ROI for property value and the community, demonstrates fiscal responsibility. And I would almost put like a little asterisk here that this project, there's a deep understanding that this project must be part of a comprehensive, long-term, town-wide facilities plan, not in a silo.
Yeah.
So even if we get to a point where this is the dollar sign for this project, there is understanding that we want to be able to say, okay, yes, this is what your vote is today, maybe, but we know that Abbott would be empty maybe and also become this, and here's what we think would go there. We think if day school was empty, and this is what, like, it has to be holistic. We have to give all of the information to the voters at the same time so that it's very thorough.
It's like the roadmap, essentially, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So-
Some
sorry, if
other
I can
things
just-
here about gyms and.
Yeah, so I saw the one about being a shelter. I don't know that we have a true shelter in town right now. We have warming stations, right, but,
Isn't Blanchard?
Blanchard is-
oh, it's Blanchard,
Yeah, yeah,
okay.
Because it has to have showers and
Yeah.
stuff,
Right,
so.
so, you know,
Yeah.
there's definitely community value to having, I mean, we can't fit that many people, I'm sure, in Blanchard, but.
Right, and I think some of this, you'll notice too that the word choice is really important, so like sometimes it says, consider this.
Yes.
Because if we get to a decision point where it's like, here's the ROI of adding these
Yeah.
features, like you wouldn't put showers in an elementary school, and I
Just
don't think
for-
it can be a shelter without showers, so does
Yeah.
that make sense? Probably not, right? But I think we're trying to just capture what the attendees said, so. And then that just becomes the charter and goals of the project. So these won't be voted on anytime soon. They're still kind of floating out there. We have a couple more forums.
May 4th.
Yes, so May 4th, at 7 PM at Robinson, that's in person. May 18th, 7 PM at Robinson, that's in person. June 11th is here, 7 PM, and the Zoom registration link is now live on the robinsonschoolproject.com website. So you can encourage anyone who's asking to register, and they'll get like the Zoom email reminder.
Is WestfordCAT going to record those 2 in-person sessions like they did the first one?
We are on their schedule.
Awesome.
The June 11th is designed to be a wrap-up of this first series. There will be more in the fall when we're talking about other things. But that's why the June 11th was going to take place in this room, because we think it isn't going to be as interactive as much as it's going to be informative.
Yeah.
The May 4th and the May 18th have specific,
May 4th is sustainability, and then it'll be like a recap of the charter.
yeah.
And then May 18th is traffic and site study.
Yeah.
I also want to share out that there is a separate sustainability working group for this project. And we had our first meeting, and there are some really exciting consultants that are part of the feasibility study team. I am not an expert, so I'm not going to explain to you all of these early slides about
Energy codes and stuff, yeah.
Yep,
Give
and
it a go, Val.
incentives. The point.
Most of those words are baseline. As you're scrolling through it, it's like, this is baseline, this is baseline, this is.
Right. I think that that's the takeaway, right, for someone at the 10,000 foot view of a lot of this is baked in, and a lot of it will have that very clear ROI. I think there's even a chart, yes, this life cycle cost analysis of here's how much this system would cost now, but here's how much they project the savings over time. So that a lot more of that to come. What I wanted to draw your attention to is that there's also sustainability goals in addition to the project charter goals. So I'm not going to read through all of these. There are 5 slides of sustainability goals that are just based on energy. And a lot of, you'll notice, again, word choice is really important here. Plan for, consider, explore, so that these trigger sort of decision points and paths, or forks in the path, and we'll be able to make decisions based on data when appropriate.
And I also assume, if we end up doing an addition versus a whole new building, some of those have different conversations.
Yeah,
types
I
of
mean, we know that
conversations,
Robinson HVAC is failing.
Yeah.
So that would be part of the
Yeah.
conversation. Sustainability goals for the site, like, are we, again, no enclosed courtyard? Are we building it for walkability? There's some goals around water, materials and resources. Again, a lot of these are like, I think I made you weren't there. I made the joke of like, I'm not going to argue in favor of high VOC, materials, but I just wanted to understand like, where is the decision point, and are you like weighing the cost of low VOC and like better
Standard, let's say.
Yeah, right, better materials versus
Right.
less good
And
materials.
what's the impact? Is it, and I'm not gonna say construction workers are less valuable than students, but does a low VOC paint, let's say, does that impact students at all?
Right.
Right.
Right. Oh, here it is, select low emitting materials. So again, a lot of this is really in our, the LED silver minimum is required under MSBA. A lot of this will add up to incentive points. So if you choose to, go for this system or these other choices, we might get more in reimbursement back. So that'll also be an important message to share with voters when we get to that point. Any questions?
I want to come back on that energy code there, Val.
Yeah, you had some follow-up questions? I can't, tapping out.
I do.
Go to the building
I
department.
do want to share with all of you, just because it's not something that you would necessarily see, but the amount of meetings and work that our staff is now engaged with is, well, I will say overwhelming. So I am very appreciative of all of the interruptions that are taking place now. Like this week, every single day this week, we will have full day meetings with the different architects trying to collect data and information. And I know Jeff Goodwin, he's been with consultants, and then every time he turns around, he's being asked to go to another meeting. And so he and I were talking today about, well, when are we supposed to get the other things done, right? And so I'm like, I will do my best to protect your time and try to figure that out. But I want you to just be aware of this is important work, and we're happy to do it. But I've been involved with an MSBA project before, but it was at the high school where there was only one building. The fact that this is multiple elementary schools and potentially impacting all 6 schools is overwhelming.
You essentially
And-
don't even know what the project is right now.
Well, we don't know what the project is,
Yeah.
but just give you an example. Before vacation, we had 2 days of meetings scheduled with 40 different people pulling staff members from every single elementary school, and at the last minute, based on a positive reason for the individual, but it had to get canceled because, and all of a sudden you're like, okay,
When do we do this?
35 of those people were 30 of those people were classroom teachers who
So they've
had
already made
sub-plans for
sub-plans,
the
yeah.
next day.
Yeah.
And we had to tell them, I'm sorry, we have to cancel and reschedule it. And so those are the little things that I'm like, I did have smoke coming out of my ears at one point, and so.
Handled it well.
Thank you. I just want you to kind of all appreciate that. Again, it's all good work,
Yeah.
and it's really important, but it's
Well,
like,
It's a huge
wow.
lift.
And I think
And
what we're.
the impact on the staff is kind of,
What we're reacting to too is that like, this was approved last March.
yeah.
It's been like this slow marathon.
burn to now.
And then it's like, we need all
now
of this
it's like
tomorrow.
Drinking from a fire hose and
Artemis just launched.
trying to hit, yeah.
Yeah.
So we really do appreciate all of the building time. You know, for a process that is built for schools, it's not really school friendly. And so we're just trying to,
And I think that's gonna be really important to put out there when we're, better term, selling this to the community at large, is this isn't being rushed into. This is representing, by that time, it's gonna be thousands or tens of thousands of
Hours.
staff and volunteer hours that have
Yep.
gone into very careful consideration of everything from,
Right.
you know, the position of the building to what materials we use to what faucet is there, right? I think every one of those decisions is going to come in.
I think that's why, I mean, we've already started to bring the community in now.
Yeah.
It's imperative that they're here as early in the
Right.
process, not just at the end,
Yeah.
at town meeting going, how much do we have to vote on? What's
Right.
this for? So,
And
yeah.
unfortunately, we're still gonna get
Yeah.
a certain percentage of residents that are going to be saying,
And we'll
whoa,
just
what
blame
do you
Val.
mean? I haven't
That goes
heard
back to
anything
the
about
survey that you took earlier. I'm like, okay.
But,
How do we-
Exactly.
How do we take that and?
and again, we have to figure out how to
Well,
reach
there's,
those people,
that
too.
question is, it does come up as like, what's the family's responsibility as well? What are community members' responsibility as well, you know? And with that, I am going to.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor? Good night, 9:50.